you get invited to say 2 words when they don't want you on the panel to discuss this. I just want to thank all of you for coming here today, especially to our panelists. This is, I think, diversity and inclusion, and especially the debate and questions we have around LGTB rights and coming out in the workplace is something that is extremely important for us to start the conversation about. Not just the conversation, but start, making sure that we're really making changes around it. I think for Godrej, it's quite simple the way we think about it. I think just fundamentally, our belief is that people are all equal. It just, it doesn't matter. We're sort of all equal. Sometimes we don't think our competitors are as equal, but otherwise, everyone is equal. So I think that's just a fundamental value for Godrej. We also, while we have fundamental values that are very strong for us, we also think of everything in terms of business. So inclusivity does mean innovation. The more inclusive you are, the more debates you can have, the less hierarchy you have, the faster it is to recover from failure. So I think that's when people say what is the business impact of diversity, unless, if you say that everyone should talk like me, look like me, be from the same background, I don't think that works well for companies. So I think for us, we're doing this both because it fits in with our values, but also because it's sort of business purpose. That being said, we do have as far as heading diversity, we've been trying to be diverse, and I think, we've had successes in some areas, not so much success in other areas. We're taking a much more MBA measured approach to it now, but we're still at the beginning of our journey. So, if our corporate communications team tries to tell you we've got everything right and stuff, don't believe it. But I think what we want to do is we do believe that having these conversations is the first step. So we have a long way to go. We want to learn. We want to learn from people. That's why, we want to host these sort of things. And we hope from having all these conversations, that, okay, so maybe to put it more succinctly, actually my dream in Godrej, especially when it comes to diversity and LGBT, I would like to personally have more people out in my organization, correct? I find it a problem. That's what I mean. If you ask me how many people are actually out, it's very, very few. And that for me is really important, because that means that, they really believe that this organization is supportive and open. So I think that's our goal, and we hope things like this help us get there. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the panel.
Thanks, Nisa, for that introduction. Nisa's been a real champion for our diversity and inclusion journey, so thank you for that. We are here, and it's a really important debate that we're having today, right? It's LGBT out at home and in the workplace. And one of the things that we think is really important, and the reason we're having this conversation is that today, even in India, we're not comfortable talking about sexuality in general. So forget homosexuality. And then the ignorance surrounding the topic. As we were publicizing this event, there's this little anecdote. We were trying to get some of our colleagues to attend this funda, and we said it's an LGBT funda, and they thought it was local body tax. So they thought we were having a taxation funda. So that's just an example, the reluctance we have to talk about the topic and the ignorance around the topic. So it's really, I'm really proud that we're sitting here and being able to discuss and have this debate. We'll have some time for audience participation and also for Harish to jump in. So please keep your questions ready. This is going to be a really exciting and interesting debate. So keep your questions ready, and we'll have them in the end. So Mrs. Iyer, I'm going to start with you. What does it feel to be a sort of icon to the LGBT community? You've become Mother India to the LGBT community, inadvertently maybe. But tell us about that story.
Well, you say Mother India, but I don't feel like that. I'm a normal mother. Like, I don't want to be named as Mother India or anything. For my son, he was a very lonely child, like right from beginning. And I accepted him but the whole family was not accepting. And then he was so busy into his work and things like that, that there was no time. He didn't have a partner, or he didn't have any friends as such. So I was telling him, why don't you find a partner for yourself? You're growing old. Like, as long as I'm there, I'll look after him. What happens after me? So my question was always worrying. What will happen to him after me? So then he said, no, I'm not able to find anybody. You find somebody for me. I said, okay, I'll find someone for you. And I placed the ad.
You didn't expect that to happen, did you? So you tried to place the ad. Tell us what happened then when you tried to place the ad.
Like, I thought it'll be very easy. First I told him, why don't you find, put it on the net, like you want to find some friends. He said, no, that's not possible. And I said, okay, then we'll find a partner for you, like through the normal ad, like matrimonial ads are there. Why don't we put one? So we just went about putting one, but then I found it so difficult because first we approached the Hindustan Times. They said, no, we can't publish it. Then we went to DNA. There also we got the same answer. Then Times of India, they took the money, but they didn't want to publish it. Then ultimately, I think in the Midday did it. But I never thought this will go so viral. Like, people will start talking about it, and it was a conversation in everybody's household, I think.
So inadvertently, overnight, Harish and you became quite famous.
I know. And there was backlash also, and from the relative side, everybody from the whole, everyone right from India, outside, whomever I have, they all started calling not me, but my other relatives. And they said, what this girl has gone and done. See, everybody are talking about it. Don't you feel it's right? She shouldn't have done it, and things like that. So I didn't mind, as long as it's for my son. I don't mind at all. Let them talk whatever they like. Ultimately, my son's happiness is the most important thing, I feel.
You know, it almost brings tears to my eyes because I'm a mom of 2 kids, and the mothering instinct is strong, and seeing that you did this because all you wanted was the happiness for your child.
For my son, definitely.
That's what it comes down to, right? You were being a good parent.
That's
Harish is very fortunate to have a mother like you. What do you think prevents other Indian parents from being as accepting? It is quite revolutionary what you did.
All parents are accepting in their own way. Like, they accept the child, but they don't want the world to know about it. The main thing is they don't want the world to know about it. They said, okay, I am accepting you, that's the end of it. I feel, I don't know, they fear the society or what, I don't know.
I'm going to ask one question that I think is on everyone's mind. How many responses did you get to the ad? Is there anyone he likes? What's the progress there?
There were a lot of responses. Yeah, he did. I wouldn't say he liked it, or rather his granny liked it a lot, liked him a lot. But it didn't go through, like, he wasn't very happy with that guy. Back to square one.
Jump in.
I think the problem with gay marriage, it turned out to be gay dowry, because there were people who wanted me to sponsor their business if they would get married to me. So I think gay marriage in India comes with its own problems, which is gay dowry.
Wow. It's another issue we have to work on.
There was one guy who, he said, I will become a daughter-in-law to you. I will do all the household chores. I will relieve you of all your anxiety. And I don't know what else he wrote. You just accept me. I've got 2 acres of land or something.
And 7 goats.
Land or something from Andhra Pradesh, I think. He said, please, please, please accept me. I will
But that's nice,
remain as a doormat. I said, okay, I don't want a servant. I want a partner for my son.
But it's encouraging that you got good responses, which I think is important. We can go back to the drawing board, but at least there were some responses. So we look forward to the next ad. So,
I think next I will do a Swayamvar, stage a Swayamvar.
Great, thank you. Radhika, we'll move on to you just a few questions. What's it like? Tell us a little bit about your journey, female CEO and openly LGBT leader in the corporate world. That's another revolutionary thing going on here. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, I'll put this on. Okay, so I realized I was gay when I was 15, and I think the first person I told was my sister, who's in the audience today. And then I told my parents when I was 17, and they had very much similar response as what you are saying other parents had. They said, Radhika, we love you unconditionally, but let's just keep this to ourselves for now. And I told, in circles, and I started to tell my good friends, and then started telling my more acquaintances in college, and it sort of grew over 10, 15 years where I started telling more and more people. But my story of really coming out, I have to tell you, it came upon me. I met my partner, I was in New York, and then I wanted to move back to India, and I didn't want to bring a foreigner all the way to India without some real commitment from my side. So we got married in London in 2011, and at this point still I will say relatively out in terms of my friends, my family. I was very, very honored and humbled that all my family attended my wedding in London. So my parents, also aunts, uncles, cousins. And then finally, Mumbai Mirror outed me. And so they ran a short story on this wedding. And so then one day I walked into my office and the watchman was reading he was reading the newspaper. So I realized going into the gate that I was going to have to address this pretty front on with my colleagues. And so from that day I was out at work and out everywhere. And I will tell you that in the long run, Mumbai Mirror did me a favor by publishing that story, because we all have these fears and anxieties as to what will happen when we come out. And I realized that the people that were really important to me in my life, who were my parents, my immediate family, my colleagues at work, they were not going to judge me for this. They were going to love me and give me their support. And so what was I really afraid of? And to be honest, I have not had any, to my face, negative responses. And I have to acknowledge I'm in a very privileged position, right? So I do manage our family business. And my father is my boss, and my father has supported me since I was 17. And I lobbied him over 10 years to be more and more open, and he's really very open and supportive now. So I'm lucky that the person who has that authority over me is supportive, and so I have no fear. And I think the challenge for many people is, we want our parents to accept us, and then we don't want to be discriminated against in work, and we don't want our bosses to discriminate against us, we don't want to be fired, and we don't want to be intimidated. So that is why people don't come out. I will say for those who have confidence in those relationships at work or with your parents to open the conversation, you might be surprised at how, and it takes effort and lobbying. So that's been my journey.
And did you feel once you So following up to that, once you did come out at work, did you feel that your work was impacted in a way, positively, negatively?
I don't think it was, if anything, I would say it was positive, because the people that I work the most closely with, I would be finally more open about sharing stories about my family life or my personal life, which is a very natural thing to do. I mean, we in India are very, very community-oriented people, and we like to talk about our spouses, our children especially, our parents. It's important. So the fact that I could begin to do that with my team, I think, made me look more like a human and less like a boss, I hope.
Are there any team members here who want to add to that? I think there's a few VIP guys here. No. Can you tell us a little bit about how you see the workplace evolving in terms of LGBT inclusion and what your dreams for the future are in that space?
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Nisa said, and I really do appreciate the effort that Godrej is making on this. It's such a taboo subject in India, and to put this kind of resource in it for the long term, I really do appreciate it. I think the corporation can play a really important role because, LGBT people are looking for legitimacy, and legitimacy in our society comes from our family unit, our laws, and then also our workplaces, our institutions, like whether it's the military, social organizations, or corporations. And the truth is, in India, it's not going to come from either the legal framework in the current scenario or politicians. It has to come from the family and the workplace, because without that, there's going to be an atmosphere of fear and intimidation. So if corporations are willing to make this an issue and talk about it, and all leading American and multinational corporations are very clear on this, their policy of non-discrimination, I mean, it's taken for granted there. And I think Indian corporations just really have to think about, do we see a Western model of equal rights as the way forward, or would we prefer, to stay where we are and follow the current Indian legal model? So that's the dilemma for corporations.
And that's why you coming out as a leader in the Indian workplace is actually really important, and I think going to be very impactful for people as we go forward. Great. Joe, you've been leading LGBT networks at Goldman Sachs for many years, and now you're at a leading consulting firm. Tell us a little bit about your coming out experience and how that was.
Yeah, so I have been fairly out all my life, though never really at work. Thankfully, I had very supportive friends. I had a partner earlier on in my life, still around with me, he's there in the audience. So I had a good support structure all the time, but never really had the courage to come out at work. But I had a brief 2.5 year stint at the US in New York, and that opened up my eyes. And then when I came back, I felt the need to come out to my folks, and that was when, in the year 2009, I was 29. And the coming out process it's still a long drawn acceptance, process of acceptance. We are there, we are not there. Someday we are happy, someday we are not. So it's not been, I haven't been as fortunate as Harish, but I guess we are getting there. Yeah, so it was one fine day after breakfast, I just called them down and I sat them down and spoke to them about it. Of course, the immediate first question was my partner, did he make you gay? So I was like, no, that's not the case. I was always gay. And things, many associated questions of that front. Do you need to see a psychologist, or are you impotent? It's not that you're gay, are you impotent, or things of that sort. We've moved over from those sorts of conversations now. My parents do accept me, but it's still not there in the sense that they are not supportive of me living with somebody else of the same sex, but as long as it's not there in their face, they're okay with it, kind of a thing. So it's been kind of not too happy, but I guess we'll get there.
You were actually telling me offline that you moved cities after you came out to your folks.
Sure.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and what that was like?
Yeah, so it was not very happy living under the same roof with my parents, and it was getting very difficult. So I started seeing a counselor, and eventually, when you talk to counselors, it's not that they give you a solution. It opens up your eyes on your own, and I realized that it's probably better for me, for my career, if I just move out. And that's when I moved to Bangalore. That's when I joined Goldman Sachs. And it was really, really helpful going to Goldman Sachs, which was very supportive when it came to LGBT network. They had a network that they had just started around that time. And I was just the second person to head the network. So it was really eye-opening for me how supportive corporations could be. It really helped me become a better professional. I learned so many things at work. And I think I give huge credit to where I am in my career today, to the support that I got at Goldman Sachs.
Nisa talked about more people coming out and feeling comfortable, because I think a true indicator of our success at this is going to be how many people feel comfortable to bring their whole selves to work and that part of their life to work.
Absolutely.
What was your experience at Goldman? Did people start coming out as you started building this network?
Yeah, so I think the focus never really was on let's get more people out, we need a number, or how do we count it and things of that sort. But I think the focus really was on, like Nisa said, right, how can we get people to be more comfortable in their own selves so that they can bring their whole selves to work. So officially, if you look at numbers, there were only about 4 or 5 people who were out in the network in Goldman. But what really mattered to us, what really was our core focus is how do we know we hang around in the same circle. So we do know that there are others who are outside of the workplace, but they are not out here. So what can we do to make them comfortable about it? So just highlighting an example. So one of the things we did at work was let's have a closed call, an anonymous call, where people who have questions can join the call and let us know what their worries are, things of that sort. And we were surprised. There were about 25-30 people who joined the call. And we heard reasons from my manager is not supportive. I cannot come out because my friends are very close to me and my family, and if I come out, the news will come out to my family, and oh, I'm up for the VP this year, and I don't know if I come out whether it will affect my promotion, and there were a bunch of things that we heard which really surprised us, because I mean, when you operate in the network, you are really thinking that everything that you're doing, you're kind of in a bubble, and you really didn't know what was happening outside. So some of those things really surprised us. Eventually we were able to address a few, not able to address all of them, but I guess it's a long journey.
And I think statistically, 5% of the population identifies with being LGBT, right? So if you... have you
My
heard-
figure said 10% for men, 5% for women.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
somewhere between 5 and 10% is that number. So that means, you know, even this room, if we have 200 people, you should have X amount to do the math out. You know, feeling comfortable to be out. And we've been doing sessions, and we've been seeing actually, you know, no one, in rooms of 100 and 200, no one will be standing up there and saying openly that they are out at work. So one question for you, Joe. What advice would you give to people who are still closeted, who are sort of struggling with coming out or feeling comfortable about coming out? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, so I'll echo what Radhika said, right? So if you are confident about yourself, you have a support structure in place, go out and do it. Actually, you will be so surprised by the support you get. I think I mentioned this to you. Most people at the Indian workplace, I have a feeling, are not really homophobic. They are really ignorant. Okay, for them, this is not really a big deal. Why are we talking about sexuality? This is the first question they say. But when you open their eyes, when you have these kind of awareness sessions, is when they realize that this is such a big deal, right? Talking on the topic of ignorance, at Goldman we also started this anonymous poll where people could rate amongst a multiple number of HR factors. One other thing, they could identify whether you are a gay man or a lesbian woman or a bisexual man or a bisexual woman, and a bunch of things. And the first time we released that survey, there were about 50 people who identified as bisexual. And we were really surprised at that number, because we hadn't thought that it will be such a big number. It was anonymous, but somehow we heard some chatter on the floor that a couple of folks had marked themselves as bisexual, and we were like, oh, are you? And they're like, what does that really mean? So we're like, you don't know what it means? They said, no, I'm a man, I like to have sex with a woman, so that's two of us, so that's bisexual. So that's how ignorant the people were. And that's when we realized we have such a long way to go when it comes to LGBT awareness. And this is a top-notch MNC with the brightest people, and this is one topic which is not addressed in our schools and our societies at all. Even when it's there in the newspapers, most people just turn it around. It's not of interest to me, right? So that's how much of work is needed to be done.
Absolutely, long journey. You wanted to add?
Yeah, this one thing was that I don't think just number of people coming out is a measure, because it's going to take time. But I think having straight allies is very important. And so the other thing that being out in a corporation does is, if we sensitize everybody just to see things from a slightly different, more complete perspective, reduce the ignorance, I think that is an equally big and commendable outcome. Because people, you know, they may not be out of work, but if they are sensitized to the issue, and then they have other people in their friends or family outside, they may be more kind to them than they would have been without any discussion in the corporate workplace.
I'm going to ask one common question, and then we can turn it over to the audience, because I'm sure you have a lot of questions about this. Let's start with you, Mrs. Iyer. What do you sort of have in terms of hopes and progress for the future? Where do you see us maybe 5 or 10 years from now?
Well, after 5 or 10 years, I think Harish will be with his partner. That's what I hope for. And more and more children are out. I want to see them.
5 to 10 years. Yeah.
And maybe they adopt a child also, because he's very fond of children.
So maybe you'll be a dadi.
Yeah, it should be legalized, I think.
Nice.
Let's see.
Great.
That's what I feel.
Great. We'll keep our fingers
Hope
crossed.
for it.
Yeah. If anyone knows any good potentials for Harish, so send us an email. We'll make this.
That's why I'm mingling.
Yes, exactly. This is a Friday Funda, but also it's find Harish a partner. So Radhika?
I would love to see Section 377 overturned. I really think it's going to hold back our country. The kind of enthusiasm and coming out and boldness that I saw from 2009 till 13, I feel we've taken a step back, big step back in the last 2 years. For me, that's the single biggest thing, because one thing is if one is educated, one has independent financial means, independent from parents, it reduces fear. But for many people, they live at home and they don't have those options to leave their house or change city, and we need a legal framework that supports LGBT rights.
Absolutely.
I would echo what Radhika says. I definitely want to see a gay marriage in India. All my friends have gone outside of India and gotten married. I want to see some gay or lesbian friend of mine getting married in India in the next 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely. That's great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, maybe Harish.
Yeah, Joe, you find
Two
a
birds with
partner
one
for
All
stone.
him.
eyes on you, Harish.
Hello, Joe. You find a partner for him.
Yeah.
We'll have the marriage. Okay? That's a deal.
I think what's really important at this moment is Section 377 has to be overturned. There's no need to read down Section 377 because now there is a law for child sexual abuse, because the only reason why Section 377 existed was the child sex abuse laws were covered under Section 377 as well. But now that we have an independent law, I think Section 377 has to go. I think marriage, much that my mother wants it, can wait. But what really needs to be done is a lot of groundwork, which will eventually lead to marriage. I think Section 377 and to just be, it's not important that people come out and people say. It's also important that corporations and organizations, workplaces and places all over are also hospitable. So whether it's another thing to expect people to come out, it's another thing to have that atmosphere that people can come out. I think that conducive atmosphere is what is needed at the moment in the absence of a law.
Absolutely. And we sort of hope that an event like this and everyone that attended this and leaves today, leaves with just a slightly different altered perspective is also an indicator that maybe we had an impact. So questions?
Hi. Yeah. All right. I kind of slightly disagree with what Radhika said. While the 377 verdict was very unfortunate and daunting, I was actually at HST office when the verdict came out, and I remember everyone's crying face, and it was superbly depressing. But what I would say that personally I feel that it was a good wake-up call for all of us. From 2009 till 2013, we kind of like went a little slow with the so-called movement. I mean, for instance, I still remember the press wouldn't cover the march anymore because for them it's like, fighting for the right, okay, you kind of like got it. But what happened after 2013 is, in fact, I saw more people coming out because they were so pissed off with what happened. Now, the way, having worked a little bit in the Mumbai community, I feel it's more like now we want the entire bouquet of rights. It's no longer just about 377, but we want the freedom to come out at work, we want freedom to get married, not get married, live in, everything. So if you look in that aspect, I think it kind of, like Mumbai Mirror did you a favor. It somewhat, I guess, did us a favor. In reality, 377, we all know, is not going away for a long time. So the best way to move forward is to change the society, because that will one day affect the law. And being Indians, as you said, we are so community driven. For us, for instance, when I came out, for me the first thing was, if my family is okay, I really don't give a shit about anybody else. And that is the mindset of most people. If the comfort level is there at home with friends, tomorrow, and if the same comfort is given at workplace, people really won't worry much about the law, in fact. So so I guess it's now perhaps the advocacy and sensitivity and such issues should be dealt more outside of the law and help change the society to make lives easier for everybody involved.
Hi, I'm Anjum. I'm from NMIMS. So I'm an upcoming HR manager, so I would like to ask a question from a business perspective. So I really appreciate what Godrej is doing in the diversity inclusion, getting it, an integral part of the business, and it's something that every company should do. So I would like to have an insight, and I want you all to throw a light on the dilemma that is coming up in the business trend of inclusivity versus meritocracy. So there's something like they're talking about is while we are focusing on the factor of having inclusivity in our workplace, while we are ignoring meritocracy. So how would you solve the dilemma? How will you make sure that you're also maintaining meritocracy as one big factor and not letting it affect your business?
Yeah, so absolutely agree with you. Meritocracy has to top inclusivity, especially in today's competitive world, but it's not like one at the cost of other, right? I think what we are looking for is an equal platform for even the disadvantaged sections to get the same set of opportunities, the same set of, conducive atmosphere to bring their whole selves to work so that they can be judged, or they can be equally competitive as compared to the other person, right? That's what we are looking for. This is not a sympathy vote. Nobody's going to say, oh, bechara wo to gaya, usko promote karte hai. That's not going to happen. Okay, this is a competitive world. All of us have, and especially corporates like this, right? MNC, multinational corporates like this is extremely competitive. I think what we are looking for here is, they are limited, the talent pool is limited. How do you ensure that you have your best policies in place so that everybody from that limited talent pool gets an equal opportunity to come in and bring their whole selves to work? That is first, right? And the second thing, like I said, there's a difference between being equal and being fair. Equality would mean probably you give an equal platform to a tall person and a short person to stand, but still the short person is still short, right? Fairness would mean you give a pedestal of different heights to different people so that they both can look at the same level, right? So that's what we are looking for here. How can you ensure that everything is conducive for you to bring your whole selves to work? That's what I'd say, yeah.
I would like to just build on this because it's not just an LGBT issue, it's also for women, caste, religion. So if we look at the top managements of vice presidents, general managers across a range of Indian companies, you'll be surprised at the trend you see. They're mostly men. If it's a South Indian company, it'll be mostly South Indians. If it's a Marwari company, it'll be mostly Marwaris. If it's Punjabi, and so on and so forth. So to think that we are currently working in a meritocratic environment is to ignore the privilege that is being given to upper caste men. And I think we have to acknowledge that as a starting point and then move forward to build inclusion that brings true meritocracy and not see affirmative policies as coming in the way of meritocracy.
Actually, and we have a question by Ashok, who is the father and the mother and everything of the Indian LGBT movement. Ashok, thank you for being here.
It's not just a question. I just wanted to differ with Sakshi and Radhika about Section 377. Laws do matter. I come from the Humsafar Trust, and there's been a flood of inquiries from parents, especially now, that after the Supreme Court, that what happens to our children? They've come out after the Delhi High Court, and they've been criminalized again. There's been a definite effect on corporate workplace policy. There used to be corporates who asked us to set up a workplace policy for, for diversity, along with community business. Suddenly that stopped because Section 377 is clamped back on. So laws do matter. For example, laws against hate speech against the lower caste or the backward caste. They do matter, I mean, people can complain all they want, but those laws do have an effect on changing the environment. If we didn't have the Sharda Marriage Act, the Hindu Personal Code, you would still have bigamy in Hindu society. So laws matter, and what really we have to, I think, independently work towards is removing stigma and discrimination in the workplace, in public spaces, wherever possible. And I think one way to go is, I think corporates should encourage sex education in schools. It's very important to start working on sex, sexuality, and gender right from the school, curriculum. You need to have it there because people don't seem to know. I think Joe's very right. It's ignorance. People, we get things like, oh, I'm a biosexual. What's a biosexual? So we need more education, and I think we can do it. It's a society that doesn't really have too much religious stigma against homosexuality. We have a lot of other things on our plate like caste and communities and the Adivasi rights. Oh, yes, that's true. Everything is on the plate. This civilization is undergoing such a dramatic crisis and transition in all sort of spheres. So we can't neglect anything. Everybody goes together. You can't leave anybody behind. But laws matter. I don't think you can neglect and say, oh, Section 377 doesn't matter. I mean, I've had acceptance right from school, from my college days. But boy, have I been through instances of blackmail, And if it wasn't for the fact that we didn't face off this blackmail in police stations, a lot of us undergo enormous stress, and I'm sure that in the workplace this is happening all the time. The hate mail, the emails that come to you, sometimes your bosses talking down and being very patronizing about your sexuality. That has to change. And it's wonderful that Godrej is taking this forward. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, building on what Ashok said, actually also is like, last year in 2014, we at Kashish, the film festival, actually we had an intercorporate meeting which Godrej attended, and a lot of corporate companies did attend, A lot of people who attended the, in Goldman Sachs, Nomura, Google, all of them, sorry? Okay, sorry. Yeah, so just saying that we organized an intercorporate meeting last year at Kashish Film Festival, which Godrej was part of, and Goldman Sachs, Nomura, Google, a lot of MNCs were part of the particular program. And what came up actually was also that the law just had changed back in 2013. So 2014, a lot of MNCs felt that, okay, we are an anti-discriminatory company. We have policies in place. But would that policies actually work in India? Can we implement those policies, the anti-discriminatory policies in India? How does it work? There was a lot of questions, a lot of apprehensions. So I just want to know what is the current situation? What do you all think? If there's a law across board in the world, does it work in India? Though we have Section 377, how does it matter or not?
I'll answer that because it's a big dilemma. As a company, we're in some ways bound by the law. This particular law is phrased in a way that I think it is possible to have non-discrimination policies in effect without going against the law. And I think many multinational companies do it, and so it would be brave, I will say, for Indian corporates to follow that. Very few are. I think actually Godrej might be one of the only Indian companies that actually has it as part of its formal HR policy. We're still in the process of doing that at VIP. We haven't rolled it out. But almost every multinational company has it in place, in effect in India, and definitely if a foreign national working in these companies in India felt discriminated against, they would take it up with HR and they would get a very suitable response from that company's corporate HR.
Yeah, so we did raise the same question to our legal panel also. Does this affect anything that we are doing right now, right? So I think the answer we got that is the law reflects to the act, and as far as we know, nobody's coming to office to have sex. So we can talk about it. As long as it doesn't lead to anything else, in office premises, it's okay.
Hi, I'm Sonali. I work as a psychologist. I have two concerns. One, I introduced my daughter to homosexuality when she was 5 over 2 simple stories, and it worked. But ever since then, I have tried to ask schools if they are open to doing a session. It has not worked out. B, I don't see a lot of literature, Indian literature, that one can use in schools or even when one is talking to one's own children. So my question is to Radhika and to Joe. One. Second, when I work with adults, I don't see enough psychological literature, Indian, stories about what's happening that people, clients can go back to, they can look at, so that when one works in therapy. So my primary concern is, are there resources? Can one collaborate as an ecosystem? How can one work together to create that, so that one works together, in a collective system?
Yeah, so I think some of that would also need to be addressed by corporates plus NGOs plus, say, a Kashish Film Festival, all of them working along with educational institutions to raise that issue. I know that, so the Kashish Mumbai International Queer Film Festival, Kashish MIQFF, they've started a section known as Kashish Forward, where they are taking short movies from Kashish to different educational institutions. But of course, that doesn't work on its own, that requires funds, and that's where corporates can support it. So what you said is very valid. I think the bigger question is, first let's start talking about sex education and sexuality in our schools. Homosexuality is still further down there, because I think we don't even talk about regular sex education in our schools. That is one way I can think about. I also know that some of my friends in IIT Bombay, and I'm sure in other organized education institutes also, are working on like the Sathi Q Connect, and which is more about literature in Indian languages, Marathi and Hindi primarily they are starting with. It's also about oral history, again in Indian languages. So I think it's a great start. Definitely corporates can help on that front by funding. There's a lot of work happening, but as of now it's all dispersed and in silos, and I think everybody has to join hands to make it more of a success.
Actually, so we have another question here, but just building off what Joe said, in listing resources, we have Shobna here from Queer Inc., and Queer Inc. is a great resource. If you haven't seen the website, it's Queer Inc. It's a great resource for material, whether books, magazines, DVDs, etc., related to India and LGBT issues. So you should totally check it out. Also, Sridhar's film that we're going to be screening after this break now addresses a lot of the issues that Ashok spoke about, where you historicize the movement and you look at these junctures, right? So so obviously you'll all stay for that, so you can see some of that in that. But also there are resources besides the IIT, Sathi Connect, there's Project Bolo, which came up many, many years ago. There's GACI, there's so many other resources now, all on the internet, that you can you just have to search, or you can just talk to actually any of us over here who will be able to help you with a list of these resources. Yeah, Ankit, your question? You want to stand up? Yeah.
Hello. Hi, so I work for an NGO named Vidya, which work with less privileged children, and I wanted to share something wonderful happened today. So we at Vidya introduce our children with LGBT diversity. We talk about homosexuality along with sex and sex education. So today morning I was taking one class and I asked one question, one puzzle, and the answer was just beautiful. I asked the question that it is a case of America where a father takes his son to an ER wherein his father sees him when the doctor, when he enters, the father sees he's my son and he cannot treat him. So how it is possible? His father is taking him to ER, then how come father as doctor is telling that I cannot treat? 2 minutes of silence and a 16-year-old kid said he can have two fathers. And that was really shocking for me, because they are from a less privileged community of our society, where their parents are his father would be maybe coming drinking every day, beating his mom. And if you really teach children in a way, appropriate way, at appropriate age, it really works. It really, really works, and I'm experiencing this since last 3 months, ever since I joined Vidya NGO. And that's my something which happened I wanted to share today. And second, I have a question for Radhika, that being any multinational company has these HR policies abroad wherein they talk about LGBT diversity. When they come to India, most of their policies are silent on it. Something which I experienced a year and a half ago is related to opening up a joint bank account as a partner. When I was dating somebody and we both wanted to open a joint bank account, even if the international banks who allows their customers to open a joint bank account as partners of same gender abroad, they were not allowing this. If it is not about Section 377, as Joy said, that people don't come to office to have sex, I don't go to bank for having sex, so Section 377 is out of the picture, then what is that one thing or a two thing which really is stopping Indian corporates or multinational companies, if they are having LGBT diversity policies abroad, why they cannot have the same in India?
So the short answer to that is every bank in this country, whether it's multinational or not, has to follow the RBI rules, and as long as that's not going to recognize, they must be having specific rules for who can and cannot open joint bank accounts. But I mean, this is why I believe the legal framework is very, very central to society. I think the marriage is a contract between people. The difference between relationships, friendships, and marriage is the contract, and that contract gives rights and privileges, financial, on getting married, on getting passed. It puts you in the framework of inheritance laws and everything. So, I mean, it's a whole long topic of why the law is important and why marriage is important for gay people. So, banking laws will follow country laws.
Yeah, and to add to what Radhika said, right? So, when any corporate approaches this topic, right? So there's of course the awareness, advocacy, these kind of sessions that we can do, which does not have to follow the legal gambit. It's fine, we can talk about it. But of course, when you talk about benefits, right? Benefits do have to follow certain structures that are prescribed by the government. I think when you look at, say, medical insurance, so medical insurance policies are probably, I mean, it's open for a man and woman who are in a heterosexual marriage to declare themselves as partners and get insurance to their company when one of them is working with a corporate. Simple. But what if there are two guys in a relationship and one of them is not working, the other one is in a corporate, and he wants to get medical insurance for his partner? That framework is not there in our system today. That cannot be changed by corporates. That needs to be addressed by the legal framework. What corporates can do is think out of the box for creative solutions to address those kind of situations. We've done that in the past, where what we've asked one of our colleagues who reached out to us with this dilemma is that go and get medical insurance of your own for your partner, okay, and we will reimburse it for you. One simple creative solution. And it addressed his problem. He went and spoke to 10 other people, and then we got enough more people who were getting the same kind of issues, not even within the LGBT framework. This was a heterosexual couple in a live-in relationship for the past 14 years. It addressed their problem also. So you have to think out of the box for some kind of solution that will address a wide range of solutions. Different sorts of family structures need not be relegated to only like one small section of your audience. Yeah.
That's really enlightening, and actually that's something at Godrej we're talking about right now. How do we offer the sort of same benefits to same-sex partners within the legal framework where we are today? So thank you for that. We have time for one more question before the rainbow cake is calling us. So.
Hello, hi. My name is Kunal. I'm a PhD student from Tata Institute of Social Science, and my work is on LGBT employees in the workspace. So when we talk in the US and all, like most of the Fortune 500 companies, last year it was 303 Fortune 500 companies. They had a 100% HRC ranking specifically for LGBT employees. And these companies also have some discriminatory policies in India. I totally agree that it's not in the law and all, but the policy, like the pillars, when we see them, like say the Nalsa verdict, at least for transgenders it can be, like something can be done. So I want to ask that rather than having, like this is a great initiative and Godrej is doing that and various other companies are also doing it, but how does Godrej takes this like a step further, like, you know, because from 2016 it becomes compulsory for this Fortune 500 companies to mandate all of the HRC policies in all the operations all across the world. So like if you want to compete and be there as a very inclusive and diverse company, then how does it work?
I think some of this is just a journey. You know, someone said, you know, the MNC is not having exactly the same policies and stuff, but I think we have to be realistic, correct? People are coming to do business in India. You have an environment where you're hearing about these things like beef bans, there's retrospective tax and stuff. This is probably not your burning platform, correct? So maybe it will be, I think the MNCs will definitely be there, but maybe it will be part of Indian companies to also sort of really push for some of these. Like we heard there's nothing in the legal framework that stops you from being fair and non-discriminatory. I actually think as a management student, I think Radhika mentioned it doesn't matter whether you're whether you come out and stuff. I actually do think it matters in a way that it's a multiplier effect. I know that Parmesh, for example, has been a strong force for change within the group, because I've had very, very senior people tell me that they were relatively homophobic till they met him. And, just in terms of, how smart he is, and he runs our leadership. No, but he runs our leadership forum. And, sometimes I'm like, okay, you're just going totally overboard. But he's really smart, and so when he walks in the door, we're not like, he's here because he's gay. He's here because he's smart. So if you're smart, it doesn't matter what your sexuality is, what your caste is, what the color of your skin is, correct? So I think that's what's really important. And the nice thing about being out is that you bring your whole self, correct? Like Radhika said, that the conversation is really sort of real. So I would encourage people, because if you're not out, you're not taking that step also, you're not sort of not exposing people to your whole self, which is important to help people change. And
thank you, Nisa. And that was the last question. Thank you all for being such a great audience, and you're very interactive and listening. So thank you very much, and thank you to all our panel members taking the time and being here.